workers. We'll hear from a lot of key voices today, but we will have time for you, we hope, at the end to ask a few questions, despite our late start. For now, though, we've asked our friends at the Organizing for Power program to moderate today's discussion. So it's my pleasure to hand it over to Everlyn Akech, who is representing Organizing for Power today, and also serves as Sub-Regional Secretary for English-speaking Africa for PSI, Public Service International. Floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Comrade Todd. Indeed, as you say, the world is currently facing a number of challenges. Just as Todd has said, my name is Evelyn Akech. I'm part of the lead trainers with Organizing for Power. And in Organizing for Power, we believe that there are methods that really work, especially to move workers to take action based on the issues that are not only critical for them, but also critical for the community. Because you are living in a world full of crises, where workers' rights are actually being violated. We also see a lot of informalization in terms of work. We must agree that there's been a debate over the last 2 decades in terms of formal versus formal economy, informal economy. But then as the trajectory and the trend shows, many of the works currently are becoming precarious. So we're having more informal sector compared to what we had 20 years ago. And that's why standing here today, as Todd has said, there's always clear linkages, there's always clear differentiation between policy and practical organizing work on the ground. And our being able to discuss issues of informal sector, and especially with a focus on care economy and also platform workers, is going to give us insight in terms of how are we able to organize practically the informal sector, where many works currently fall in terms of precarity. And you're hoping that by the end of this webinar, we should be able to come up with some of the practical steps, how to effectively organize within the informal sector. As Organizing for Power, we've trained more than 35,000 organizers since 2019. And we still have other forthcoming trainings which will take place in February next year. And we want to encourage all of us who are attending this webinar today, please join Organizing for Power. We are always willing to help you build your capacity, among others, in case you need to reach out to us. In the interest of time, I'm not going to take a lot of time because we need to get into the discussion. Now, before we go into our panelists, I want to invite Comrade Rob Waynes of Empower to be able to start off the discussion. Now, Comrade Rob has actually had extensive experience when it comes to working both with informal and formal sector, with a number of companies and also a number of governments, giving advice in terms of championing workers' rights and working conditions. So he is the right person to actually help us to understand this topic, the clear divide between formal and informal sector, before we invite our panelists to give us more details concerning the various sector. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Sister Evelyn, and thank you, ITC, for the invitation to today's program. My name is Rob Waynes. I'm serving as the Executive Director for the Multilateral Partnership for Organizing Worker Empowerments and Rights, Empower. Very briefly on Empower, it's a partnership of governments, trade unions, labor support organizations, and foundations that support labor and labor issues to advance union organizing, collective bargaining, and the realization in practice of fundamental principles and rights at work, at workplaces across the globe. It's a partnership of the global North and the global South, consisting of the governments of Argentina, Brazil, Canada, Colombia, France, Germany, South Africa, Spain, and the United States, with National Trade Union Center partners from Colombia, Argentina, Spain, South Africa, Germany, as well as the ITUC and the International Domestic Workers Federation. We also have partners from the Solidarity Center, an associate organization of the AFL-CIO, Global Labor Justice, the Workers' Rights Consortium, and the Project for Rights in the Economic, Social, and Cultural Sector based in Mexico. And we have a consortium of foundations called Forge that are part of the current partnership. The Empower partners are working together to identify and support union organizing, collective bargaining, and fundamental rights campaigns globally. These concepts and ideas are in large part generated from the trade union and labor partners of Empower. And we've identified several areas of work, industries, and or themes that have been the initial discussions and will be and is and are the initial focus of the Empower partners as it relates to support for these campaigns. And organizing and the protection of rights of workers in the care economy, and organizing and the protection of rights of workers in the gig, platform, digital economy have been identified as two as the initial areas of the Empower partners' focus and support. Support for the campaigns, but also interventions and political support on the part of government partners in particular, with governments where campaigns are taking place and where violations we know will take place, as well as with interventions with companies in those sectors from their host country. The work in the care economy was initially proposed by the International Domestic Workers Federation, who have been very active in the care economy and in the domestic aspect of the care economy. The pandemic exposed how critical this sector is and how many problems exist in the sector. Informality, home care workers, practices in the public sector where some of the care workers work, attempts to privatize and other abuses in the sector, including occupational safety and health, violence, including gender-based violence and harassment, particularly in the domestic aspect of the care economy, unpaid hours, unpaid work, restricted movement as it relates to migrant workers, and in particular in some of the Middle Eastern countries and Gulf state countries where the kafala system is still in place in several of those countries. As you all know, the care sector was also just discussed at the ILC, and this sector has been identified as important both by the government and the labor partners as it relates to the critical nature of the sector, as it relates to the large number of people that are working in the sector, as it relates to the large number of women working in the sector, as it relates to the large numbers of migrant workers in the sector, and the intersectionality of those issues. The areas of work that the Empower partners have been discussing and focusing on include campaigns being led by unions and allied organizations as it relates to protection of care workers, particularly informal care workers under the labor and employment laws, having access and coverage under the Social Security system, and having access to regulation as it relates to working conditions, occupational safety and health, and unemployment, access to unemployment schemes in the various countries. The government of Spain have been a leader in this area. Also, in supporting union organizing efforts, public care workers, private sector, including national companies and international multinational companies working in the care industry in the formal sector, supporting campaigns for adoptions and ratifications of Convention 189. And also we're in discussions with UniCare, who I know is going to speak in a little bit, on how the Empower partners can coordinate with and mutually support our respective and mutual work. And the ITUC, of course, is going to speak on the work that they're doing, as it's a major area of focus for the International Trade Union Confederation. As it relates to the gig and the platform in the digital economy, this has also been identified as early work for Empower. Empower is a relatively new initiative and a priority both for the government partners and for the trade union partners. And this is for a variety of reasons. The growing and increasing significance of gig and platform and digital work in the global economy and in national economies, and this new kind of work. The various levels of regulation, which is to say, in most countries, the lack of regulation or no existing regulations or minimal regulation and protection of workers in these economies, including as it relates to their classification of employment. We've been in discussions on how Empower Partners can support workers in the issues related to monitoring and working conditions and workers' rights associated for workers working in an economy that's based on algorithms. And then pure organizing campaigns that unions in several countries have underway or have started, or where unions have actually even been formed, to strengthen those unions and to support unions with financial resources, but again, with political and diplomatic interventions when the violation occurs, when these workers try to organize and start forming unions and try to assert their collective bargaining rights, which everyone on this call knows inevitably happens. Also, the Empower Partners have committed, the governments and the labor partners, to a coordinated response to the ILO questionnaire in the standard settings process, and to encourage and urge and work with the government and labor partners of Empower to submit replies to those questionnaires based on the work of the experts at ITUC and your affiliated organizations that address all of the nuances and complexities of this sector, so that when the standard is set, it's set properly and thoroughly. For the purposes of time, I'll end on these are the areas that the Empower Partners are discussing, where governments will support the labor organizations engaged in these efforts. And we will be convening the Empower Partners in the autumn of this year, probably in September, based on the recommendations of our working group specific to the gig and platform economy, where the partners, both from government and labor, will have an exchange of experiences that they've had to date in protecting workers' rights under law and in organizing and asserting collective bargaining and trade union rights in the sector, as a basis for additional discussion and actual practical programming on the ground, which again will include coordinating with ITUC and Global Union Federation's efforts in these areas. So with that, I thank you again, Sister Everline, and to IUTC for this opportunity to speak briefly on these issues related to Empower and to set the stage for the discussion today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Comrade Rob. You've actually set the stage, and I'm now going to invite the panelists to give us their submission. From Rob's discussion, you've actually noted there's a clear difference in terms of formal and also informal, but then you realize that different partners have got different expectations. Government is looking at the economy, trade unions are looking at the organizing and trade union rights. At this point, I'm going to call on our panelists, and I'll begin with Rashim. Could you just tell us from your experience, what have you actually undertaken to be able to overcome the issue of informal versus formal divide when it comes to organizing within your sector? Over to you, Comrade Rashim. What are some of the things you've actually undertaken to be able to overcome the formal versus informal divide while undertaking your organizing as an organization?
Thank you, Sister Evelyn. And thank you for inviting me to talk as panelist on this particular subject when it is concerning the care economy, not only in the formal setup, but also in the informal setup. I would like to talk about SEWA's experience, the Self-Employed Women's Association's experience on this subject. We are a central trade union, and we are organizing the women workers of the informal sector from last 52 years. And when we say that we are trying to organize them, we also mean that we want to empower them by providing them work security, income security, food security and social security to the extent that they get healthcare, childcare, and insurance. We during our work with these women workers have found that they have an immense additional work to while they are shouldering the responsibility of earning for the sustenance of their family. Women also play a very, very important role and a major role as caregivers uh, caregivers, be it in childcare, in elderly care, care for the differently able, and so on. And in doing so, they end up spending a major portion of their time and their energy in these activities, and thus ending up becoming an unpaid care worker. However, despite the fact that these care services consume a lot of their time and energy, they remain invisible and have no recognition either in the labor market or in the government. And hence, there are no policies concerning these work or these workers. Thus, addressing the need of the informal women workers has always remained in the forefront. And we therefore started to work on the following aspects. Like, we invested a lot in the care economy, financially, technically, and through human resources in the last decades, as we believe that it will improve the living standards of our workers. The foundation of the care economy was laid in Seva in the early 80s in one of the districts of Gujarat, the province where I come from, when members started asking for solution to the childcare issue so that they could go out and work peacefully. At that time, our late founder, Sri Ilaben, immediately offered to babysit for these members while they went out to earn their livelihood for the families. And what started as an impromptu daycare center soon transformed into full-fledged professional childcare service or provider, and operated and managed by these women workers themselves, and a cooperative was formed. Today, there are more than 50 such childcare centers run by the cooperatives of the Seva members themselves, and they cater to children in the age group of 0 to 6 years. These cooperatives strive to be self-sufficient, and they pay 15% dividend to its members. What started in rural district was also followed in the urban areas, which are called the knowledge centers, and it got adapted to the needs of these urban area members. For Seva, care services itself means a means of livelihood. Childcare centers generate livelihood opportunities for the women for the informal economy. So, for women working in the childcare center or in someone's house,
sorry,
yes.
Rashmi, allow to be the disembodied voice. I know we'll have opportunity to give us more information. So I kindly request that you first of all get the introduction in terms of the divide, then I'll give you another opportunity. So permit me, sorry for cutting you short, to just call upon Judy to also just give us, I want to appreciate the fact that you're able to start from a daycare and formalize it. So you're able to actually overcome the divide between the formal and the informal discussions. At this point, I want to call upon UD, and UD, you'll have just 3 minutes as agreed to just explain to us, because the audience would actually want to appreciate, being that you're also organizing within the platform, you're organizing platform workers. How have you been able to overcome this challenge between formal, where there's non-employers, and informal, to be able to organize? Over to you, 3 minutes. Do we have UD?
Hola compañeros,
Perfect.
hola compañeros. Sí, gracias por el espacio, saludando a todos los compañeros en este foro. Sí, es algo muy complicado, la verdad, es un trabajo nuevo para muchos, igual una forma de lucha nueva, la cual tiene muchas aristas. Relativamente, nosotros dejamos de trabajar para poder empezar a educar a nuestros compañeros de que tenemos derechos Acá en Colombia es un poco complicado ya que el sindicalismo es algo de lo que está muy reprimido. Acá ser sindicalista tiene muchas complicaciones. Nosotros hemos empezado a hacer trabajo de campo, a reunir a nuestros compañeros, nos reunimos en ciudades, viajamos, uno nos hemos tomado la tarea de llevar esta bandera y esta lucha del trabajo en aplicaciones para que todos entiendan que hay una dignidad. Desgraciadamente, en nuestro país, las patronales están abarcando demasiado y pues ellos tienen el factor dinero y esto hace que la lucha de nosotros sea opacada porque pues ustedes saben que la mayoría de trabajos tienen una renta al final de su mes, tienen un beneficio, una salud. Nosotros no. Nosotros estamos dominados desgraciadamente por un algoritmo y ese la mentalidad que le están vendiendo no solo a Colombia, sino al mundo. Nosotros en Latinoamérica tenemos muchos compañeros que están acá también, Chile, Bolivia, Perú, Uruguay, Argentina. Nos hemos puesto la tarea como líderes de enfocarnos en sacar un espacio para educar, porque es eso, para educar a nuestros compañeros, pero sí nos toca trabajar con las uñas, porque para hacer esta lucha nosotros tenemos que cranear muy bien el tiempo que invertimos para hacerlo. Muchas personas han bajado los brazos porque desgraciadamente o hacemos esta lucha o comemos, ¿sí? Entonces es algo complicado, pero que no podemos dejar atrás. Y los que estamos con la bandera en alto de sacar esto adelante, sabemos que hemos hecho muchos sacrificios, que nos toca duro, pero tenemos que seguir adelante, más ahora con esta cuestión de la IA, la gente se está dando cuenta que eso no solamente es una cuestión de los trabajadores de Rappi, ni de Uber, ni de Cabify, sino que en el sector público, y aquí que tenemos compañeros del sector público, están viendo cómo esto está pasando de dejar de ser una herramienta, un reemplazo, y yo creo que nosotros como seres humanos tenemos que empezar a visionar si estamos creando nuestra propia extinción. O sea, esto es algo loco lo que voy a decir, pero Skyler nos quedó cortos. O sea, Terminator no está ni en los tobillos. Nosotros nos estamos convirtiendo como en la película, en esa pequeña resistencia que debe de abrirle los ojos a los demás compañeros y decirles, miren, somos humanos, tenemos dignidad laboral, ¿sí? Eso no es de que la gente piensa que uno se conecta y se desconecta, no, nosotros no somos el computador, nosotros somos de carne y hueso, tenemos unas familias, tenemos unos hijos y por eso la lucha no solamente es en Colombia, la lucha es de todos, tenemos que ponernos las pilas y es complicado, vuelvo y lo digo. Muchas veces hemos intentado, la verdad, dejar esto, porque el ataque que tenemos como trabajadores de aplicaciones es terrible. O sea, ustedes ya lo han vivido porque ustedes llevan mucho tiempo en esto, pero ser las personas que trabajamos supuestamente y creamos una lucha en contra de un algoritmo es algo muy duro. O sea, ellos piensan que nosotros nos manejan a través de estas programaciones igual que el computador y hacerle entender a muchas personas que eso no es así, que acá no hay libertad, que nosotros realmente no somos autónomos, que nosotros dependemos de un jefe, que hay una subordinación, ¿sí? Se está volviendo en algo complicado porque esas empresas, porque es una empresa como todas, esas empresas tecnológicas le hacen ver al mundo que esto es un boom y que wow, qué chévere toda la tecnología, pero no es así. La realidad, la precarización, esto se está volviendo como la canequita del computador donde están llegando abogados, médicos, psicólogos, dejan sin trabajo, tin, coja un carro, se queda sin trabajo, coja una moto y a repartir el delivery, el súper trabajo. Esto se está volviendo el reciclaje humano. Entendámoslo desde ahí. Yo quiero que la gente nos entienda. Nuestra lucha es gigante, es gigante. O sea, estamos los humanos contra los algoritmos.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aya, for your submission. We appreciate the challenges of fear factor where people have to live, the fight to go for food. And basing on that, I want to bring on board Comrade Bill. Comrade UD has actually talked about some of the challenges. Maybe just from your perspective, in terms of what UD has actually not pointed out, because you specifically focus on the platform transport workers. Apart from the challenges highlighted by UD, what have you actually undertaken to be able to overcome the challenge of formal versus informal within your platform sector in Kenya? Over to you, Bill. Please keep it 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. So in terms of strategic response from Transport Workers Union, where we have heavily been involved in organizing the ride-hailing drivers, as well as the food delivery and courier riders, what you've done, first of all, is internally as a union, we've tried to restructure our own organization and constitution, because we are a trade union that was formed during the industrial economy, specifically designed to represent workers in the formal sector. So even the internal structures that we have, they were made to reflect the wishes of formal sector workers. But what we have done is we have reviewed our own internal constitution to open up membership for platform workers. And this has been done through an affiliation model. Just to mention to you, Evelyn, and other participants, is that these platform workers, they have also organized themselves in their own, whether it is associations, some are organized in welfare groups, some are organized in savings and credit cooperatives. So what we did as a union is, based on the challenges that we encountered initially while trying to organize them, is we have created set spaces for them through affiliation models, such that we are affiliating organized associations of platform workers into the union. We have defined what services they're supposed to get from the union. We have opened up election positions for them to contest, so that they can able to participate in in our union activities and feel that they are members. Secondly, is also what we have done is we have invested a lot in research, because what we realize is that the perception also of platform workers, these are people that have been made to believe that they are independent contractors. Mentally, they believe that they are not workers, that their relationship with the platform is not an employment relationship, rather it is a partnership. So part of what we have done is to invest in research, trying to understand how is work and labor processes administered in the platform economy, and how can research help us in understanding the specific needs of platform workers, so that when we go out for organizing, we are able to communicate to them exactly what they intend to hear. And through this, we are able to, build some sort of solidarity and understanding on why it is important for them to, first of all, understand that they are workers, and then secondly, understand that trade unions were meant to protect workers. Lastly is, we have also tried to be innovative in terms of how we adopt technology to organize this group of workers, because these are workers who are scattered everywhere. A driver, a platform driver is on the wheel all the time. So it becomes difficult for a union to, sort of organize meetings with them, as opposed to formal sector, where we organize workers meetings at shop floor level or at company level. But then through technology, we've been trying to adopt use of WhatsApp, for example, to bring them together into groups and use it as a medium of communication. We have also tried to see how we can engage in bulk short message services, so that we can be able to send bulk messages to quite a number of drivers, so that they can understand what the union is doing. Then lastly is to adopt digital activism, whereby we are using social media a lot to build their power and also to build agitation on them. Thank you so much. Back to you, Evelyn.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bill. You've talked about associations, talked about technology, talked about abandonment constitution as a way of overcoming the divide between formal and formal. And now this brings me to Eva, because Eva, you're currently organizing the domestic workers or care workers. And I just want to know, how have you been able to transcend between formal and informal sector divide, especially that you deal with the migrant workers who are basically normally informal? Just in 3 minutes, then we'll get opportunity to go deeper in terms of how you actually did it and the method. Over to you, Eva. Is Eva on?
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, I'm here. Je suis là. Bonjour. Je parle en français. J'avais mis, voilà. Alors, oui, donc, la Ligue des travailleuses domestiques de la CSC Bruxelles, c'est vraiment un exemple, en fait, qui veut marquer l'histoire. Alors, depuis la création déjà d'un premier groupe de travailleuses domestiques sans papier, nous sommes au moment des travaux de la Convention 189 et de manière historique, ce groupe, justement, va envoyer une travailleuse domestique sans papier, en fait, aux travaux de la Convention de la recommandation 189. Le cadre est posé. Une travailleuse sans papier participe aux travaux et revient avec la victoire d'avoir participé à l'élaboration de la Convention 189 sur les travailleuses domestiques. Les années passent et on se rend compte que dans notre groupe de travailleurs, travailleuses avec et sans papier, donc toujours dans le principe de convergence des luttes, il n'y a pas assez de femmes. On se rend compte aussi, et ça c'est une analyse ethnostratifiée, une analyse intersectionnelle du marché du travail qui met en avant justement l'ethnostratification sexuée du marché du travail. Les femmes migrantes, elles sont là. C'est une personne sur deux des personnes migrantes. Il n'y a pas de féminisation des migrations. C'est juste la visibilité de ces femmes sur le terrain migratoire qui a augmenté. On se rend compte donc que les femmes, elles sont fantasmées comme des bonnes cuisinières, elles gardent bien nos enfants et ainsi de suite. Et donc, on s'organise pour voir comment pouvoir toucher les personnes les plus difficiles à atteindre aujourd'hui sur le marché du travail. Il s'agit des femmes. La dernière enquête de l'EFAT, Uni et autres, en fait, a mis en avant que parmi les plus de 6000 répondants, plus de 96% étaient des femmes parmi les travailleuses, travailleurs, travailleuses. Et ça nous permet également de mettre en lumière des droits fondamentaux auxquels doivent répondre les syndicats. Notre syndicat qui affilie les travailleurs, travailleuses sans papier depuis 2008 se rend compte qu'il est très difficile d'organiser un collectif de travail composé de travailleuses domestiques sans papier, tout simplement parce que chacune travaille auprès de particuliers. Comment donc prendre conscience que Aïcha, Nulufer ou Delia sont payés 5 euros par heure, alors que d'autres qui travaillent en situation régulière dans les titres services sont payés 13 euros par heure. C'est tout un travail justement de sensibilisation, de tenter de trouver les femmes et de tenter d'attirer justement toutes ces femmes alors qu'elles travaillent déjà du lundi au samedi jusqu'à des heures incroyables. Et donc nous allons avec un répertoire spécifique qui mêle l'art, le côté artistique, au répertoire d'action syndicale. Nous allons pouvoir toucher beaucoup plus de femmes et nous allons pouvoir alerter l'opinion publique avec des moyens que le syndicat n'a jamais investis jusqu'à présent. Donc nous allons justement investir, je voyais les questions déjà dans le chat, et nous allons investir justement le travail syndical pour répondre à 3 droits fondamentaux. Le droit d'être protégé durant toutes les procédures de plainte. Pourquoi? Parce qu'il y a des conventions européennes. Je parle de la Convention d'Istanbul contre les violences faites aux femmes. Je parle de la toute récente directive européenne signée le 13 mai 2024, il y a quelques semaines, contre les violences faites aux femmes. Je parle de la récente Convention 190 contre les violences sur le lieu de travail signée le 13 juin 2023. Je parle des directives sanctions, des directives victimes qui donnent le droit à chaque travailleur, travailleuse, quand cette personne est sans papier, de pouvoir être défendue durant toute la procédure. J'ai encore plein de choses à dire, mais j'imagine qu'on le dira peut-être après. Je ne veux pas dépasser mon temps. Ou sinon, je continue, hein. Et donc, là, le deuxième droit fondamental, c'est le droit d'avoir accès à un travail légal. Voilà le travail du syndicat. Lutter contre le dumping social, lutter contre la dérégulation du marché du travail avec les personnes qui sont aujourd'hui instrumentalisées, mais répondre aussi à la pénurie structurelle dans l'accueil. Nous avons besoin justement de ces femmes à plus de 96% qui gardent nos enfants, nos parents et nos malades.
I'm going to be the disappointed voice.
No problem, yes.
Because we need to get more from me, but I'm only going to give you 2 minutes in terms of the next round of questions because you've already entered into more than your 3 minutes, and it's a follow-up question. Now, from your discussion, you said one of the issues that you're able to do and the reasons why you got them is because they're being paid less money. That was €5 compared to the other counterparts of €13. We know that being a migrant worker, most times they'll not be willing to come out in the open, be part of the meetings because of this fear of being deported, among others. What were the issues? Just focus on what are the issues that you're able to put forward before these care workers to give them the confidence to come out and actually be part of this great movement to demand for their basic rights in the place of work. Just in 2 minutes, what were the issues that really drew them from you to give them the confidence to come up and speak up? In just 2 minutes.
Ce que nous avons fait, c'est simplement de montrer que tout ce que nous avons planifié, nous l'avons réalisé. Au début, les femmes viennent à ma permanence, elles ont peur de porter plainte. Et puis, nous mettons en fait en acte et en acte artistique, c'est-à-dire que c'est ça le travail pour la démocratie. On parle de démocratie aujourd'hui. Mais les femmes de la Ligue des travailleuses domestiques ont vaincu leur peur et se sont réappropriées démocratiquement l'espace public qui leur était refusé. Elles se sont réappropriées démocratiquement la parole qui était censurée jusqu'à présent. Et elles ont non seulement imaginé porter plainte au niveau européen contre tous les niveaux de pouvoir en Belgique, parce que justement elles n'arrivaient pas à porter plainte et que certaines d'entre elles étaient violées, étaient même tuées justement au travail. Nous avons porté plainte, nous sommes allés présenter notre plainte le 23 janvier 2024 au Parlement européen. Nous avons imaginé organiser un parlement historique des femmes travailleuses domestiques. Nous nous sommes réappropriés le parlement bruxellois. Nous sommes rentrés dans le parlement. Nous avons organisé ce parlement. Tout ce que nous avons projeté de faire comme marcher sur un tapis rouge dans un faux parlement, nous l'avons fait dans le vrai parlement à Bruxelles. Donc c'est ça qui donne la confiance à ces femmes. C'est d'imaginer, c'est de rêver et de concrétiser leurs rêves.
That is quite amazing. And it is from there that I'm actually going to come to Rashim. Rashim, you told us in the first part is that you're able to form associations, okay? You're able to give dividends to some of the women that you organize over 400,000 because now we know that you've organized over 400,000 workers within different sectors. Just from what Eva Maria has actually said, for them, there were issues of lodging complaints. You want practically, how were you able to convince over 400,000 informal workers to be part of your engagement, the organizing practicality? What were the issues that you did as Rashim that made somebody to come and say, look, I'm going to be part of this movement that led you to have 400,000? And please, Rashim, keep it to 3 minutes. When you see me raise up my hands, get to know that you need to go to the next person. Over to you, sister. Rashim.
Thank you. The biggest challenge that we had while we were organizing the caregivers was to bring them all together. They were all very scattered, and because of their invisible nature, it was also very difficult to reach out to them. But the strategy that we adapted was to be in touch with these women again and again. And secondly, the capacity building was one thing that we really focused on. And capacity building not only at the ground level, but giving trainings to them along with the certifications and a proper training institute certifications enable the caregivers to understand the importance of their work, and that is how from one person to the next person, more and more women were engaged in this work, and the caregivers became part of our union. So I think skill development and capacity building were the two aspects that we focused while organizing.
Great. Thank you so much, Rashim. Now I want to come to the platform workers. I'll begin with Bill, then I'll come to Yudi. Bill, you've already given us some of the things you've actually been doing in terms of issues of social media, etc. Currently, could you just tell us what are some of the campaigns you are engaged in terms of getting more of these platform workers on board, practically getting them to even form part of the association? And maybe what are some of the challenges in just 3 minutes?
In terms of campaign, first and foremost, our campaign is based on social protection. As you know very well, labor and social protection, these are two sides of the same coin, and one cannot do without the other. So what we've done is we've been able to build an alliance with the government through the National Social Security Fund and also the National Health Insurance Fund, just to ensure that despite the fact that these are platform workers who are not formally recognized under the law as employees, but then how can we be able to cushion them from risks associated with their work in terms of job security and also health insurance? So our number one campaign has been on social protection. Through this, we've been able to build a platform with the government where, these workers, we're able to, first of all, train them to understand, the importance of social security. But then also in terms of feedback, they're also able to share with us what are the issues that are affecting their work and how can the government improve on these working conditions so that they can be able to have the capacity to make social security contributions. Secondly, what you've also done is we have developed a memorandum. This is a petition to the government. In this memorandum, we did a wide-scale survey of all ride-hailing drivers in Kenya, whereby we are trying to understand what are the major issues that we can use to develop an organizing as well as a lobbying campaign. And the issues range from the number one, the issue is fair pay, where the drivers feel that they're not fairly compensated from the work that they're doing. The other one is the issue of lack of a grievance handling mechanism. Find that because of algorithmic management, many of these drivers are being deactivated, and this is a paining issue for the drivers. So when you address such an issue, then you are able to build a very strong movement at the grassroots. Another issue also is that there's lack of a proper pickup and drop-off points, whereby drivers lack pickup and drop-off points, they lack proper sanitation facilities, and this has been an important organizing and lobbying tool with the local county governments. So these are three major campaigns that we've been running, and we've been able to engage with the drivers. We realize that these are issues that speak directly to the issues affecting the drivers. And in terms of representation, we've been able to lobby the government. For example, we've been able to lobby the Ministry of Transport in Kenya based on these three issues to officially recognize ride-hailing sector under the National Transport Policy. So currently, we have regulations that are governing the ride-hailing sector in Kenya, and this is an important win for us because regulation of the ride-hailing sector brings into open the type of work that these workers are doing. Secondly, the other campaign that we are currently running is we are now pushing the Ministry of Labor to officially recognize these drivers as workers. This entails review of the existing labor laws to look at where are the areas where we can be able to review the existing labor laws so that we can officially bring official recognition of ride-hailing drivers as workers. Secondly, also is we've been able to lobby the
Bill, just the final one because we're running out of time. Sorry, brother.
Thank you. The final one is we've been able to push for an establishment of a collective bargaining forum which brings together government, platform workers, the platform companies, as well as industry experts. And it is in this collective bargaining forum that we are currently running a campaign on how can we develop a pay and pricing mechanism to ensure that these drivers are fairly compensated. All these actions are helping us to build a very strong grassroots movement and bring all these workers into the union. Thank you, and back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll just come to you, Dee. You've heard what Bill is actually saying in terms of what they're doing today. Maybe we just want to know from Colombia, considering there's a lot of challenges, what are some of the campaigns you're working on, and what are some of the challenges you're facing? Also, I'll give you 3 minutes, sister.
Bueno, sí, Evelyn, aquí se están haciendo bastantes campañas, vuelvo y digo, desde lo que tenemos, ¿sí? Desde lo que tenemos, hay una campaña muy fuerte que se llama No más autoaceptar, que es dejar que el botón de que nos asignen y nos asignen pedidos malos, malos pagos, es una campaña que ya lleva 2 años y ha funcionado bastante. También tenemos nuestras campañas con gobierno. Nosotros hemos estado fuerte gracias a ahorita al gobierno que tenemos, que nos ha puesto un poco más de cuidado, temas como reforma laboral. Hay temas que a través de reforma laboral nos ha ido bien, pero otros articulados no, porque pues las empresas siempre van a querer, ¿no? Dominar. Así haya una política y haya una normatividad, quieren dejarla hacia el lado de ellos, pero estamos batallando fuertemente con eso. Tenemos campañas de desconexión porque nuestra lucha es diferente, empieza a ser diferente ya con este tipo de tecnología. Entonces, nuestras protestas, hemos hecho varios apagones a nivel nacional. El tema de Ministerio de Trabajo. En este momento tenemos una mesa de diálogo con el Ministerio de Trabajo. Sinatrap Agremiar logra ingresar con el apoyo de la CTC a sentar en una mesa de diálogo a Rappi, debido a que gracias a lo que ya les comentaba de estas patronales, acá han logrado desligar el trabajo de movilidad y el de reparto. Nosotros como sindicalistas sabemos que este trabajo es uno solo, ¿sí? Movilidad y reparto, call center, todo lo que más tecnología es aplicaciones, y pues se debe luchar es por la dignidad laboral. En el sector de migrantes es algo que la verdad aquí en Colombia tenemos un gran porcentaje de sector migrante. Se está haciendo las campañas con migración, a ellos se les ayuda jurídicamente porque hay mucha gente que aún está indocumentada, ¿sí? Entonces, este tipo de campañas se realizan regionalmente. Nosotros, por las cuestiones, bueno, digo, económicas, eh, tratamos de coger regiones cerca a los líderes que están dentro de junta directiva para poder hacer estos apoyos. A través de la CTC también hemos generado capacitación para el mundo sindical, para que la gente reconozca y adquiera el conocimiento sobre la dignidad laboral, y nos enfocamos mucho en la familia, porque nosotros acá no trabajamos para nosotros solos, estamos trabajando para una familia que queremos que salga adelante. Se hace un enfoque en familia, se hace un enfoque de género, se hace un complemento de todas estas situaciones, y en unas regiones más que en otras, porque nosotros tenemos ciudades donde el sector migrante eh, tiene más facilidad o tuvo más facilidad de llegar y adaptarse a estas regiones, ¿sí? Entonces, dependiendo la región, lanzamos la campaña y pues seguimos, son como estos nuestros enfoques: la migración, el género, obviamente la mujer como base de la sociedad, y el respeto de nuestros derechos. Esas son las campañas que estamos sacando adelante en este momento, de Berlín.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll move quickly to Eva. You already talked about a bill you're bringing, so just in under 2 minutes, could you tell us, in addition to what you said, some of the major campaigns that you have, so that audience could be interested in what you're doing? Over to you. 2 minutes.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, depuis 3 ans, en fait, nous marquons à nouveau historiquement, en fait, la scène, en fait, européenne et bruxelloise. Pourquoi? Alors, il y a 3 ans, nous avons organisé le premier Parlement des travailleuses domestiques, durant lequel une grève historique de travailleuses domestiques sans papier a pu voir le jour et qui était encadrée par une grande organisation syndicale, la CEC étant le premier syndicat en Belgique, avec 1 450 000 affiliés. Parmi ces affiliés, des travailleurs et travailleuses sans papier qui ont des mandats qui nous représentent, notamment par exemple à Genève, s'il le faut, à l'Organisation internationale du travail. Deuxième campagne, 1 an après, à l'occasion de la Journée internationale des travailleuses domestiques, encore le premier tribunal du courage politique, durant lequel les victimes sont devenues des avocates, c'est-à-dire que celles qui jouaient non seulement en fait leur rôle dans une pièce, dans l'espace public, il y a une réappropriation de l'espace public, il y a un reversement du stigmate, puisque ces femmes qui étaient victimes ont endossé des toges d'avocates et ont lu une liste d'accusations, et puis condamnées avec les 250 personnes présentes à main levée à l'unanimité, le ministre de l'Emploi pour non-assistance à travailleuses en danger. Décision de porter plainte au niveau européen. Plainte acceptée auditionnée le 23 janvier 2024. Plainte envoyée dans 3 commissions du Parlement européen, la commission de la justice, la commission égalité femmes-hommes, la commission affaires sociales et économiques. Enfin, cette année, vendredi, énorme succès, plus de 300 personnes ont assisté à nouveau une pièce action où les femmes jouaient leur rôle, mais jouaient aussi le rôle du patron. Le nouveau gouvernement du courage politique a vu le jour ce 14 juin et elles ont décidé d'organiser un premier ministère du care et du travail domestique, parce qu'aujourd'hui, malheureusement, elles sont ignorées, elles ne sont pas entendues, mais elles sont fondamentales. Et elles ont aussi choisi, et je terminerai par là, elles ont choisi de ne plus parler de secteur reproductif. Elles estiment que le travail de care et le travail domestique est tellement important parce que c'est celui à qui on donne
So,
justement les
Eva,
personnes les plus chères. Je
sorry,
termine.
dear.
Et donc, voilà,
I know you're passionate about this.
elles
I
ont
know it. So
réussi
just wind up.
justement. Ben voilà, donc elles ont réussi justement à mettre en avant le fait que le travail de care est un travail qui produit des richesses.
Yeah, I just
Merci.
want to invite the audience to really check on the link that Eva has actually posted. She's passionate about this work. She's done a great work. And I know if given opportunity, she'd give us more information, but you're constrained with time. I just want to give Rashmi, please keep it under 1 minute. You know, the horse that comes last is always the one which is whipped more, but you bear with me, sister. Lots of love. Over to you. Key campaigns, key challenges.
According to me, the care economy workers should have a voice, visibility, and validation for their work. There should be legislation to protect their rights and provide them social security. And to achieve this, we have to strengthen the organizing. And unions like SEVA, who are working in the informal sector, need to become more prevalent and more stronger in it. Moreover, the initiatives as it like the ILC that talked about the care economy, the migrant workers in the care economy, as well as it also talked about the women in the informal sector itself who would require care work. The identification of all these campaigns are very, very crucial, and these need to be addressed in a larger campaign furthermore.
Thank you so much, sister. We all agree from the submissions, beginning from Rob himself, is that while looking at the issues of informal care, some of the key issues that really outstand for all organizers that resonates with the workers within this sector is social security, just as put forth by both Rob, talk about Mtoro, talk about you and others. Issues of decent work has come out to be very important, but also issues of having strong laws to protect the informal sector. Both are submitted by Eva and also are submitted by Bill. But just as Rashmi has actually noted, what is going to be very important for us to be able to overcome this divide is strengthening organizing of these workers. And remember, just like many of you have highlighted, issues of gender-based violence and decent working conditions, among others, are the key issues that every time we go to organize must be at the heart of the organizing conversation. With this, I want to welcome my brother Todd to take us through to the next session of the discussant. Todd, over to you.
Thank you to Evelyn for your expert moderation, to Ava, Judy, Bill, and Rashim for your stories and strategies. We're going to hear from the next few minutes of reactions to what we've just heard from our panelists from 3 global union federations, and then we're going to open it up to the questions that we've received so far in the Q&A. So I see some of you have your hand raised. We'll endeavor to keep this short so we can keep it on time. First, I'll invite Sister Jeanette Armstrong from UniCare. Jeanette, if you could keep it to 3 to 4 minutes. I know we said 5, but 3 to 4 minutes. Reflections on some of the stories you've just heard, and also tell us a bit what Uni is working on in terms of organizing care.
Sure. Thanks so much, Todd. And thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you and congratulations and solidarity with you and your members in regards to all of your inspiring work. For me, I think the common themes that were really standing out from an organising perspective were well, obviously the issue of formalisation and invisibility being such a big part of that, and that the first step to formalisation is helping to bring these workers out of the shadows and actually educate the broader community about the workers that the work that these people are doing and how it contributes to our communities and societies. Another common theme I heard was really about training. It's such an important step to support formalisation and professionalisation, but also a really great way to engage workers about their rights, to build union awareness and to start that organising process. And then coupled with that, I heard a lot of people talking about technology and, you know, from Uni's experience as well, it really is such an important way to access these types of workers, to educate them about their rights and to build that collective power and solidarity in online spaces. Because yes, I think there's a question there about, you know, how do we do this in decentralized and highly individualized work environments? And I think technology is such a big part of that. But it was also really interesting to hear our brother there talking about how workers are organising themselves already, and actually there's communities of interest that exist, even though these are decentralised workplaces. And our job as organisers, I guess, is to find those and tap into those and leverage them to organise from a union perspective. So in regards to the work Uni is doing, or our affiliates are doing, a lot, you know, similar to this, and I'm speaking from a care perspective. So I know that there's so many more great and inspiring stories of unions organising. For example, community health workers in South Asia, in DR, Colombia, Brazil. We've got some affiliates doing amazing work to organise home care workers there. And, you know, probably a lot in concert with what Sister Ava was talking about. There's, you know, across Europe, a lot of work happening in the PHS space that is really, really exciting. And I guess one thing that I really want to say before I have to wrap up is that I think one thing that we often face or confront when we start talking about organising informal and platform workers is that it's too hard, it can't be done, they need to be formalised first, but we cannot wait, right? By getting organised, these workers have more power to demand and win the recognition and the formalisation and the government action they need to facilitate all of that. Everybody is better off if these workers are organised sooner rather than later. And once they are formalised, they're ready to go, right? And often we we are scared for these workers or to organise these workers, or scared by the perceived challenges and the risks that the workers might face. But actually, in my experience, a lot of these workers, have been in this insecure work for so long and face so many threats from their employers who are pretending they're not really employers, that actually, they want to be organised, they're ready, they understand, and they want to take those risks. And so we need to get in there and help facilitate that and help them organise.
Thanks so much, Jeanette. Really appreciate your thoughts and your comments. Next, we have French coming across on English. We have French coming across on English. Thank you. So thank you, Jeanette. Next, I will ask Brother Ruan from the International Transport Workers Federation, the ITF, to give a response a bit, especially on the platform side, but on informality in general. Ruan?
Thank you very much, Todd, and thanks to all the panelists for their extremely inspiring interventions. It's really wonderful to hear the work that's been that's happening on the ground. So I think one of the common themes that ran across both Yudi and Bill's presentations was really the need to employ industrial, trade union, political and legal strategies to really try and secure decent work in the platform economy. It really has to be a three-pronged approach, seeing how well funded these platforms are and seeing all the efforts they're putting in to try and suppress workers' voices in these spaces. Another common theme was the difficulty in dealing with platforms or algorithms as your boss. I was really struck by what Yudi said in terms of algorithms ruling our working lives and people thinking that there's no one behind the computer screen, that this is just an invisible technological entity, which is, of course, not true. There are humans behind the screen. In terms of organizing, I thought it was very interesting to hear from both Yudi and Bill about the use of technology to try and organize workers, recognizing that platform workers are very much an atomized workforce. There's a lot of fear of retaliation. There's fear of being monitored and surveilled through the platforms. So the use of WhatsApp groups, the use of social media clearly seem to be ways to engage workers. And on that, I was also struck by what Bill said around platform workers feeling not really having an identity as such. They feel that they're self-employed workers who engage with an invisible platform. There's a lot of work to do in terms of establishing that identity, that class consciousness that's really needed to move things forward. Now, as we're talking about democracy and trade union democracy, what Bill highlighted in terms of the transport workers in Kenya are doing in terms of reforming their internal statutes to welcome platform workers, including having dedicated sections and leadership positions, really speaks volumes in terms of what we need to do to work together with upstart grassroots unions, recognizing the critical work that they've done. This is not a competition between grassroots unions and incumbent or recognized trade unions, that we can indeed work together to advance the cause of platform workers. Perhaps the one other thing I would say is that focusing very much on the urgent or immediate needs of platform workers as an organizing tool seems to be doing wonders. I mean, we heard from Yudi about the campaign not to accept bad or unsustainable orders. In Kenya, focusing on access to sanitation, toilet rights, talking about drop-off and pickup points, or focusing on grievance handling when that's not easily done when you're working through an algorithm. So overall, I think what I got out of the discussion was that you have to focus on organizing, structuring yourselves well internally, keep the fight going at the legal and political level, seeking law reform, because if you don't employ all three strategies, then we're certainly missing out on one element or another. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Ruan, and to the ITF. And last but not least, for the reactions, before we open it up to questions from the floor, I'll go to Sister Huma, who is the Global Care Officer at Public Services International, or PSI.
Thanks,
Yours.
Thank you. Hope everyone can hear me. Yes, thank you so much to the other panelists. I think it's incredibly helpful to hear kind of the organizing struggles that are going on in different countries. And it struck me most just coming out of the 2 weeks, very intense 2 weeks we had at the ILC, how disconnected these big global kind of structures and processes are from kind of the organizing work that's going on the ground. And I think there's a huge amount we need to do at kind of the global level, particularly at the global union level, to kind of bring those stories up to these very hallowed halls that exist, because I don't think employers and governments really understand the strength of the workforce and kind of how kind of the push that we're kind of all going into organizing these workers. I'll be talking today kind of from a care perspective as well, but I want to talk a bit about kind of where this informality is kind of coming from and the context that's involved. And we've seen across kind of the global south that the public provision, particularly of social care, is virtually non-existent. A huge amount of countries, lack the resources and the infrastructure to provide universal public care services. And there's lots of cultural norms that exist, which mean that caring responsibilities are seen as the responsibility within households and mostly within women. And because of this, the gaps within care services mean that private and not-for-profit actors are increasingly taking on a critical role in providing care services. But what we've seen, particularly with our affiliates at PSI, that these services are rarely universally accessible, they're not gender transformative, and they don't necessarily guarantee decent work for all care workers. And as private care services become unaffordable, public care provision fails, care recipients, unfortunately, are increasingly hiring workers for the informal economy to meet demand. And this isn't just a problem within the global south, within the global north. Government policies aimed at addressing care provision have failed to ensure decent working conditions. There's been a general decline in the provision of public services, and this has gone hand in hand with the increased privatization of care. And this has led to the emergence of technology to kind of fill that gap, particularly, the emergence of digital labor platforms, which are connecting workers and service users within care. And as we know, care work is quite labor intensive, and the nature of care work does not correspond directly to the technologies that are emerging and existing, particularly that these technologies have a big focus on enhancing productivity, whatever that means, monitoring work. And we're seeing a lot within PSI for our unions that it's, an extra challenging when organizing care workers, because care work has an invisible nature. A lot of it is within private households, it's with lots of different employers. And it's evident that in this kind of digitalized post-pandemic world that we are now in, that we need a new approach. We know that online platforms generally make jobs more casual, they pay less, there's a huge limit to social protection, and they're also introducing new forms of control. For one thing, we've seen a lot with our affiliates is through kind of reputational mechanisms, which can impact workers' potential to find work. And such mechanisms tend to disadvantage workers who have more caring responsibilities, for example, through penalties for cancellation. There was a study in Australia, Germany, Denmark, Spain, and the UK, which found that workers believe that reputational mechanisms, which is where they are rated for their work by care service users, do not necessarily lead to them finding better forms of work or jobs. Our colleagues at EPSU are launching a new report examining the emergence of online platforms within care on the 24th of June. I urge you all to register. I will figure out how to share the registration link with you all. And I also quickly want to touch on a project PSI is doing with the community health workers in India. This is a hugely informal workforce that's made up entirely of women. They suffer huge amounts of exploitation. They're seen as volunteers. They don't have access to decent work, suffer huge levels of violence and harassment. And one of the really key outcomes we've seen with this project is increased participation of community health workers within union activities. Their membership has gone up in the union, and this has had a positive outcomes for workplace bargaining and winning some really successful industrial actions. We've seen wage hikes, we've seen COVID-related bonuses, we've seen improved occupational safety. The community health workers, not just in India, but across South Asia, have been able to negotiate more regular payment of wages, better hygiene facilities, and secure and safe spaces to take breaks, which was a huge demand of our affiliates. But as we've heard today, that this is very much the first step. This is work that we need to kind of carry on. We need to tackle the rise of different technologies and how employers will kind of be, behind what we saw with the IOCs, that they're going to be saying, oh, we need to improve productivity. We need to enhance kind of access to work for service users. We need to ensure that, we're meeting the growing demands of care. But as unions, as workers, we need to make sure that they're not cutting corners on that governments aren't kind of just outsourcing to private providers to build an AI algorithm to figure out how to meet care needs. So I think there's a huge amount of work for us to do to push for that positive change.
Thank you so much, sister. So with that, it's time to hand it over to you, those of you who have been patiently waiting. So I'm going to select a couple of people to go live. Please keep it to just a question because we're short on time. And please select a panelist or panelists that you would like to address your question to. So first, I'm going to start with Brother Mohammed. I'll have you go live. Do we have Brother Mohammed, or is he logged off? Here we go. Brother Mohammed, are you with us? If not, I'll ask his question for him. Okay. No, we don't have him. Apologies. So let's see if Sister Dure is still with us. Hi, Sister Dure, are you with us? Remember to unmute yourself. If not, oh, there she is.
Hi, thank you, Brother Todd. I'm just wanting, it is really a wonderful information by all the speakers, and it is very, really informative on this specific time when we are organizing platform workers, because in the emerging era and the new uh, uh, challenges that are emerging within the informal work is one of the new skills that are workers getting it and going on the platforms. My question is specific is that because, there are different algorithms for the platforms, and nobody's going to observe that because the platform workers are really working hard, like 24/7 even. So nothing is going to monitor and observe and what, despite of giving different algorithms for safety and protection. So my question is related to that also, if anyone can answer to that.
Thank you, Sister Dure. We'll allow a second for interpretation. Would any of our panelists like to address? Yes, I see Yudi.
Hola, compañera. Sí, desgraciadamente el tema de seguridad social, lo que es salud, esta protección, en sí estamos totalmente abandonados. Nosotros trabajamos 24/7, esa es la realidad. Se trabajan de 14 a 18 horas al día. Tanto, vuelvo y digo, siempre que yo hablo por mis compañeros de movilidad y de reparto a la vez. Es algo que se han hecho campañas, pero desde nosotros, para solventar este tipo de seguridad, pero no se ha llegado a un acuerdo equitativo. Ahorita con los planes de reforma se quiere implementar la seguridad social para el sector, pero en Latinoamérica y en nuestro país nos han dividido. Entonces, quieren abarcar un sistema de protección a medias, por decirlo así, como por darnos un contentillo, pero solamente están incluyendo al sector reparto. El sector movilidad lo han dejado por fuera, porque hay una clasificación, pero es precario ante eso. No es como veo que el compañero Bill en Kenia, que ellos han avanzado en eso. Acá nosotros seguimos siendo informales y nosotros realmente lo que necesitamos es el reconocimiento como trabajadores para poder eh, adquirir, como todo el resto de nuestros compañeros, esos derechos.
Thank you, Sister Yudi. Next, I'm going to have a question from Aisha. Aisha, I'm going to ask you to unmute and ask your question briefly. And if there's a specific panelist you'd like to ask, please name them. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next then. Let's ask Fatoumata. Fatoumata, are you with us?
Merci,
Hello.
je suis avec vous. Je ne sais pas si vous pouvez m'entendre.
Yes.
Allô? Vous m'entendez? Merci. Aujourd'hui, chez nous, c'est la fête de Tabaski, mais je tenais à suivre parce que le thème est très intéressant. Tout ce que je voulais dire concernant le secteur de l'économie informelle, il se trouve que la mise en place de la protection sociale a été faite par euh, le privé et public, ça veut dire dans le cadre formel. Mais avec le secteur de l'économie informelle, il y a des problèmes de recouvrement et autres. Et jusqu'à présent, au niveau du Sénégal, l'informel pense que ce n'est pas pour eux ce système. Maintenant, il nous faut un autre système, mais que l'informel doit contrôler dans sa globalité. Ça veut dire qu'il y ait une certaine solidarité, qu'il contrôle, l'informel puisse contrôler les mécanismes qui sont là pour pouvoir les servir. Et je pense que ça, c'est d'où l'intérêt. Ça, je pense que les trois, on parlait vraiment du secteur de l'économie informelle. Et dans le cadre aussi avec la 189, je ne sais pas si ça me prendra du temps. Et ça veut dire qu'il y a
Thank you very
l'anniversaire.
much.
Voilà, d'accord. OK. Merci.
Thank you, sister from Senegal. Anybody would like to respond to the necessity of social protection for informal workers and what you might be doing to ensure it? Please, Uma.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's hugely important. It's definitely something we've seen at PSI with the work we're doing for community health workers. I think a lot of governments and particularly international multilateral organizations, when they're trying to push for kind of universal health coverage by 2030, are meeting the gap with these community health workers, but they're not understanding how they don't have access to social protection and decent work. So what our community health workers have been doing in South Asia have released a chart of demands. They came together and they really thought about what they actually need, what are their key demands, and they've been pushing that with their governments and been having meetings with the relevant ministers. They've also been talking to other unions within the public health and care space, which I think is a big thing for informal workers. A lot of these informal workers have maybe been left out of traditional organizing and traditional union structures. So really making sure that we have the labor movement united, supporting their demands, I think is a really key thing as well.
Yeah. Okay. We are just 1 minute past time. I want to say a sincere thank you to Everlyn for moderating, especially as we had technical issues that started late. We're managing to finish close to on time. I want to thank our panelists, Ava and Yudi and Bill and Rashim, for joining us from all over the world to tell the stories in their countries. And of course, to our respondents from ITF, Uni, and PSI, and to all of you for your questions. If you want to know more about ITUC's campaign for democracy and our focus right now on democracy at work, you can go to ituc-csi.org/for-democracy. And we'll see you for our next round of action, which is focused on democracy in global institutions, starting in September. Thanks all. Have a nice day.